What I do currently is work in several ways. I either work with companies who need to relocate, so cultural specific briefings. I work with international companies that have got issues between multicultural staff, but also a large part of my work is working with small and medium-sized companies who need to export and want to expand overseas and grow their businesses. Developing cultural intelligence is, I think, the most important thing about doing business overseas. It's much more important than having a language. Cultural intelligence is about understanding that different cultures, different nationalities have different ways of doing business. So that means that there's an impact on the way you negotiate, the way you make your sales pitch, what a deal actually means, how you communicate with somebody, the respect that you show for your peers overseas. One of the most important things about your brand when you're traveling overseas and trading is that you need to make your brand obvious, what it stands for a foreign audience. We have some wonderful brands with lovely logos and snappy little phrases, but to a foreigner they don't actually mean anything. Keeping your brand is really important. Being authentic to your brand is important, but on your business cards, your letter headings, on your website, you need to be very obvious about what you actually do. You can't expect people, especially a foreigner, to put 2 and 2 together and come out with 4. They'll miss the link. Business practices are something that you need to research as well. There's plenty of websites out there for you to get tips, but why would you need to know about different business practices? Well, meetings are a place where cross-cultural differences can come into play. You might go into a meeting and find that somebody is leading the meeting and you automatically assume that this person is the lead negotiator or the boss, but quite often he isn't. And it might well be that somebody sitting very quietly, not saying very much, not doing very much, but just giving little eye signals or hand signals is really the person who's pulling all the strings. I've been in a meeting where a very young person was taking the lead, and my client was asking me, why is this person doing this? Why is such a young person being responsible for such a big deal? And it's because he was the nephew of the boss, and because he spoke English, and because he'd done accounts at university. Blood is thicker than water, and the boss thought he was far more capable of looking after the negotiations rather than a stranger or an employee. The main area where people fail when trading overseas is to assume that everything that is done the British way is done that way overseas. The way people can better gear themselves for working overseas is to really become sensitive to the differences or the little shocks that are happening as you're doing business. If ever something happens and you think, oh, that's unusual, you need to stop and ask yourself, why do I think it's unusual? Because there's actually a culture shock going on. What's happening is that something is different from your norm. So you should question yourself, what's my norm? So how's that different? What lesson can I learn? And can I apply it to another geographic area? One question I'm always asked is, how do I know which geographic area to expand into? Well, first of all, you need to know what your aims for going abroad is. Is it to grow your turnover, or is it to cut your cost? If it's to cut your costs, and therefore you're going to outsource, well, you have various options, and most people choose India because the English language is known very well over there. I often ask people to start thinking about going to Estonia and places like that, because they're very good education, English is good, and they are wired to the rest of the world, and they're not as far away as India, but their costs are actually lower than other European countries. But if it's about trade, where can I expand to grow my turnover? Now, that's a different question. You need good research to find out which countries will be an opportunity for your goods and services. And that's one of my jobs. It takes a long time to research. But you need to understand where you might have an edge. Obviously, there are lots of Asian businesses over here who have family in the subcontinent, so they will automatically go over there. But if you're just born and bred in Britain without relatives overseas, it is more difficult. I actually love trading with the Nordic countries because I find them very straightforward. They're very principled, they're very extremely honest, and they pay quickly. And any overseas business costs money. So if you can get your money in quicker from certain places in the world, that's where I would suggest you start. Currently, we're in a tough economic climate. Business is hard to get over here, and we're trying to steal market share from somebody else. So it's a great opportunity to go abroad, to trade overseas. Where I become involved with people and how I help people is when they've decided what their target market is, and that is usually done with the help of UK Trade and Investment. Then they need to know some country-specific information. How do I negotiate? How do I make a pitch over there? How do I find clients? What's the best way of making connections? And I come in and I either do training with the business owner in cross-cultural communication skills so he can mould his pitch, because every culture has their own hot buttons. Or I also do research for a business owner, trying to find clients for him, and even hold his hand as we go abroad to meet the client. The best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, which is deborahswallow.com, to see the types of work that I do, and all my details are on there to get in contact.